I am back. Hopefully, I am on. Hopefully, my audio is working well. But this is the 5th episode of the Thriving Student PT Show, and had a 1 week hiatus from last week, but busy moving around and whatnot. So let's get right into it today, talking about personal finance and financial independence, because one of the big things that all PT students think about is just finances, whether we are especially talking about from last week's episode or 2 weeks ago's episode, where I talked about the finances that go into going to a PT school in New York and whether it makes sense for you or not. And as we can see, like, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot depending on where you live, what your personal financial situation looks like. And so I thought it'd be good to basically talk about how we can make it work for us, because whether it is about how we can make enough money, how much it costs for us, it's a very, very big deal, because it's a very big decision to make. And the more we are equipped and able to handle our finances, the more we are able to make sure that we are on the right journey for ourselves. And there's lots of school costs involved in it. Are we going to be making the right salary in order to pay off the loans, and even after school or during school? So finances are always on all my students' minds, all my classmates' minds, my minds, like whenever I get out of school, whether I'm able to pay it off during school, whether I can actually pay off those loans, but also whether it's worth it for me in going to PD school. And I just want to highlight something where it's like, I think it's super important to talk about the problems that all of us face in PT school, and those who are planning to go to PT school. The more we normalize things, the more we're able to talk about it. Like, this last week, especially in like PT schools, like our first week back, starting again for our second term. And it's very unfortunate where it's like, I hear 5 of my classmates had to like drop out of the program for various reasons. And I feel like the more we are able to talk about these problems, the more we are able to normalize it, handle it, so that people don't spend so much time and energy into going to PT school, applying to PT school, getting in, and then ending up dropping out. I think it's super relevant to talk about these issues so that we are all able to have the best plan to best able to handle whatever comes up. And for today's topic, I'm talking about finances, because I know for like at least one of my classmates, going to PT school is a very, very big financial cost. And especially if you have to drop out of program, like for one of my terms is roughly $12,000 per term to $10,000 per term, right? It's a trimester program, so it's a $32,000 per year. If you have to drop out of the program, that's $10,000 that basically goes to waste. That's another year of cost that goes down the drain, basically. And so it's very important, I feel like, to at least talk about the financial aspects of how we can best weather this and whether it even makes sense for us. And so this is why, like, I want to talk about this, and to help people avoid that situation and to address it for future students who also are talking about it. The more we talk about it, the more we're able to have conversations and handle it. And today, talking about finances. So back to our slideshow. And I wanted to talk about this, like, because I get a lot of what I'm talking about through this recent book. Let me take a step back. I've always been living this way, and like a lot of my personal finances happen to align with this book called The Psychology of Money, which I was recently reading. And it has a lot of good tidbits. And I thought it'd be super helpful for people to kind of get like a couple of snippets of how they can use a couple of these sayings into their own life to reflect how I view a lot of my own personal finance and money situations, so that they have a better grasp of how they can achieve what they want to achieve in life, financially speaking, which also bleeds into their personal life, family life, and how they live life in general. So one of the quotes that they have in this book is that the highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. And I feel like this statement is like super powerful, because I definitely lived that in my own life. Before I even decided to go to PT school, I had a pretty good cushy job, I'll be honest, right? And from that, I was able to save a lot of money. And when I decided to go back to school, I was able to actually take that choice, take that leap, and pursue that journey when other people are not able to do that in their own various lives, right? I was able to build up a good small amount of money so that by the time I decided to apply to school, I was financially equipped to do that. And that gave me that flexibility to make that decision one day. And having that decision is like having that freedom and independence to make that choice to do whatever it is that you want to do and be okay with that is like super powerful. And I don't feel like a lot of us have that choice. Like, let me ask you this, like, can you actually take off work one day randomly and be like, you know what, I can't go into work today for ABC reason. Maybe I was listening to one of my mentors, Greg Todd, talk about it. He tried to take a day off to go to his own wedding, and he was not able to do that back in the day. And now he did back then. He wasn't able to have that wealth, the personal choice, the personal freedom to do that. Like, same thing for us. It's like if one of our kids has to call out sick and we need to find somebody of ourselves to handle the kid. Like, do we have that flexibility? Do we have that money? Do we have that freedom to do that? And I think a lot of us can answer this definitively no. Or take a trip for as long as we want. Do we have that choice to do whatever it is that we want for that day? And I feel like a lot of us do not have that choice. And that's why it's super important for us to get a hold of our finances and talk about that. So this is like one of those sayings that I think it's like, if you ask this of yourself, do you have this form of wealth? Do you have this ability to do whatever it is that you want today? And I feel like a lot of us do not have that choice. So that's like one quote. Like I have like two more other quotes to talk about because I feel like the book is full of knowledge. Like, it's good to shift your mindset on finance with this book. So I'm going to leave a comment or a link down below just for you guys to check it out. But let's talk about the second thing. And I think this is a little bit more tangible, where we can see a lot of examples of this in all of our everyday lives. And it's wealth is hidden. It's income not spent. Wealth is an option not yet taken to buy something later. Its value lies in offering you options, flexibility, and growth to one day purchase more stuff than you could right now. And I think this makes a very, very good point about wealth means, because it's very easy to see rich people and think that they have everything in their lives with their fancy Bugatti or 90-inch, 100-inch television or whatever fancy designer brand like clothes, bags, and whatnot, and think that they are very, very rich. But all that means is that they bought those things now, and down the line, they may or may not be able to buy the things that they truly want later on. And it's like, it's always the wealthy people who you don't see flaunting their wealth that you'll never know that they're rich. And therefore, it's like this kind of a weird feedback mechanism where like you think you have to buy all these things to make yourself feel rich, but you're actually not. You're actually like hurting yourself down in the long run to buy the things that you want to buy later on, or spend it on the things that mean the most to you, whether that's vacations, whether that's a day off, whether it's just that option of being able to do what it is that you want to do. So I feel like this is a very, very good quote to like talk about. And then the last one is also that building wealth has little to do with your income or investment returns, and lots to do with your savings rate. And what does that mean by savings rate? It's basically what percentage of your income or salary are you able to save for future needs. It doesn't even have to be for like retirement. It doesn't have to be for like a vacation, but just being able to save that money and save a good chunk of it. And down the line, like that is basically what's going to entail you to build the wealth that you're looking for, and not doing any risky investments, because ultimately it's about the time in the market. It's not about, and I'll go more into like investments down the line if that's something you're interested in, just like my own philosophy on investing and how you can get about it. If that's something you don't know much about, leave a comment below if that's something you're interested in talking about that. But I felt like these three quotes like summarize a good chunk of how I operate, where it's like try and save as much money with what you have currently, but also know what it is that you're going for, because ultimately, let's leave it at that. So again, the book is called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, I believe, and I'll leave a link in the description below with the book. And when we're talking about savings, right, I really want to talk about how we must always focus on the basics, meaning our survival, literally survival, because I think a lot of people have very different interpretations of what it is that they truly need. And need is a very, very specific word versus want. And there's a quick demonstration of what I'm talking about, right? Like want would be wanting a I don't know, a couple $1 million mansion, while need is basically you need shelter over your head. You need basic running water, you need food to survive, and you need some way to make money, basically. Whereas want would be I want like the fancy designer Prada bag or whatever 90-inch projector or a yacht or a boat or a fancy car when a bicycle would serve your needs. Needs are something that I'll define later on because when you um so because it's very important to know about what we're talking about in terms of needs versus wants. The more you're able to basically focus on just paying off your needs and saving the rest for future down the line use, the more you're able to actually build the wealth that you're looking towards, is my interpretation anyway. And I feel like I've definitely lived that life, especially early on. Like, I'm not sure a lot of people know this, but like going to PT school is my second career. Before that, I was an engineer. And when I graduated in 2006, I probably came out with like $50,000 or $50,000 in student loan debt. And it took a while for me to pay that off. But how did I pay that off? I'm going to go through that process later on. But basically, I identified what it is I needed to live on. How can I pay off everything as quickly as possible so that it doesn't drown me in student loan debt later on in terms of interest and whatnot? And then after that happened, how can I make that money work for myself? And there's a lot to go into in terms of how I did that, but I'll probably break that down in future videos to talk about. And one of the biggest things I really, the way I lived is really emphasized in terms of like the FIRE movement, which is the financial independence and retire early movement. You don't have to go into that route, but like I just wanted to show you this one little, I'm not sure if you can actually read this, but basically, it's like a spreadsheet, a flowchart by this lovely user called Happy Asian Panda on the Reddit Fire thread, which basically details how you can get your own financial independence, how you can build your wealth so that you are not struggling in a day-to-day life, how you can make sure you are earning more money, how you know that you can have that independence to do what it is that you want on a day-to-day basis, how you're not worried about how you can pay for things, because it emphasizes the process and the flow of what you should be going on a step-by-step basis to make sure you have your needs down before you start venturing into your wants and making the best out of it financially. So I'm going to talk about basically the first step for today because there's a lot to dive into for that. And again, I really want to emphasize what we're talking about here in terms of like our basic needs. We're talking about where you're going to live in terms of your home. How are you going to feed yourself? Food, groceries, and whatnot. How are you going to like pay? Well, how much does it cost for you to pay for your electricity, your heating, and any other utilities that you're going to need? Gas. And are there things that are going to cost you money in order to make money? That's important because you need to account for these things. And then healthcare, like in terms of like health insurance, like what happens if something happens to you? Can you actually pay for your accident, injury, disease, especially during these times in COVID? Like that's going to take a big chunk of money if something were to happen to you. And can you actually pay for that? So health insurance is a big thing. And then we'll dive into like talking about just debts and loans and like just addressing them so that they do not creep up on you as time goes on. So for the purposes of this video, it's always talking about what exactly do you actually need? Need meaning what do you need to survive today, this month, on a month-to-month basis, how much you need to pay in order to do that. And so when we talk about it, like home is usually, where you live is usually the biggest expense for, actually, even before we do this, like I want to, if you're like following on this video, like take out a pen and paper, jot down these categories and draw like a line to the right of it. And that way we can like just run down the numbers, because ultimately finances is a big numbers game. And if the more you're able to know what numbers you deal with, the more you're able to basically define how much of your income you're actually taking in and how much you should be putting towards your basic expenses. So when we talk about this, all right, like the biggest expense that most people have is their rent, their mortgage, or even renter's insurance or condo home insurance, right? So it's like, do you actually know how much you're paying for your rent and mortgage? And write that down, and we'll tabulate it later on, right? So that's number one. Like, how much do you actually spend on your home? Number two, how much do you spend on your food and groceries? And I find for myself, it's really hard to keep track of expenses. So like I've used Mint a lot back in the day. I don't use it much as nowadays, but I felt like that was a good way if you spend a lot of transactions on your credit cards to basically tabulate how you are spending your money, where the money is going, and categorize it based on like whether it is your food, whether you're going buying clothing a lot, whether you're spending it at the gas station. It's a good way to just tabulate your expenses so that you know on a month-to-month and yearly basis what it is you're spending on a budget. So food and groceries, definitely spend, put down an amount that you are spending. And I think Mint is a good way to just tabulate how much you're actually spending rather than doing it in like a spreadsheet or a log. Just do it automatically. And there are lots of resources out there. And Mint was just one of the resources I do. So let's tabulate how much your food and groceries cost you. And then electricity, utilities, it's like, how much do you pay for your electric bill, gas bill, heat bill, water bill? Pretty self-explanatory to basically cover what it is you're paying for in your home. Pretty self-explanatory. And then income earning, like I know a lot of us have different types of jobs, whether you're a PT aide, whether you work for yourself, whether you need to drive an hour away to go to work. Like what are all the costs that are required for you to keep on making money? Sometimes it might paying for your internet. If you work from home, whether you are a YouTuber, whether you do a lot of webinars or you just work from home straight up, like internet would be the biggest cost of that. Like without the internet, you can't make money. If you travel to work, whether you travel to a clinic, how are you paying? Whether that's through a subway, whether that's through your car, like how are you actually getting to where you need to get to in order to make money? And there are probably other things and expenses that will hinder how you make money if you don't use it. So these are expenses that you need to include to basically include as part of your needs and basics on a day-to-day basis or a month-to-month basis. And then I talked about healthcare before, but it's like, how much do you need to pay to have actual health insurance, right? Like, God forbid you get caught in the pandemic. Let's just say with that. And are you going to be able to pay for the bills that might be incurred if you are in the hospital for a very long time, or a lot of the medicines that you might need on a day-to-day basis to have good health? It's important to actually account for this because without this, you're probably not going to survive, and therefore healthcare is a very, very big, vital part of what it is that you need on a day-to-day basis to account for in your very basic preliminary needs budget. And then lastly, like I talk about debt and loans because it's important to recognize that if you don't pay off your loans or your debt, you're going to slowly accrue more and more interest and your principal does not decrease. But at the same time, like if you can't make the maximum payment on it, like what exactly is the minimum payment that you can make so that your credit doesn't go down, you're setting yourself up in a decent position for the future where your credit score isn't down the drain, which impacts you buying major purchases down the line, whether that's a home, a car, and student loans, because all those things have a compound effect, and messing up with your credit score is not a good thing in the long run. So what are the minimum payments that you need to pay for on your student loans, your credit cards, your personal loans, anything else that you might have a loan out for? Tabulate that. And I think at the end of this, you basically have a little small table of like, how much does it cost me for my home? How much does it cost me to feed myself? What are the utilities I need to pay and how much is that? How much does it cost me to basically get to work, make work, earn money? How much does it cost me to get health insurance, and pay for any medical expenses that are going on in my day-to-day base life? And what are the minimum payments to pay for my debts and my loans? And at the end of it, you tabulate that all up, and that's basically your needs that you will require to pay on a month-to-month basis. And like I said before, like the more you're able to basically at least pay these off and save the rest, which I will detail in a future video because this is already running for like a 20-minute long. But if you have any questions, like leave a comment below about anything financially related, especially in your life. And I feel like it's hard to say this, but where it's like finances are a big deal. And a lot of us don't know where to start with our finances. And the whole point of my exercise is to basically demonstrate like, okay, let's start off with the basics. What do you need to live? And like I said, need is a very strong word. Some people have very different definitions of need, but need in this particular case is what do I need to survive? Like I said, the expenses that I listed are your general, most people is what they require in order to live in today's society. And that's the purpose of today's video, because once you're able to recognize how much that number is, you can start building off of that in terms of like, okay, if I am just going to cut out all my other extraneous expenses, this is how much I can save on a month-to-month basis. And you might be surprised to know how much it is that amount is. And most people don't know what their personal financial situation looks like. And therefore, this is just a very starting template in terms of like, this is what I need, and what do I have extra to go towards whatever I need in the future. So that's that. And for my next topic next week, I'm going to go into like, okay, once you know how much you need and what on a month-to-month basis you have left over, how can you start adding a little more emergency buffer room? How can I start making it so that like I'm not just surviving on a month-to-month basis? I have a little leeway, because once you're past the survival mode, and I'm referring to like Maslow's hierarchy, where it's like you're past survival, now it's a little comfort and safety, right? Like this is the basic point of the emergency buffer zone. It's like, where can I start building in something so that I have a safety net, and that if like an expense comes up, like maybe your car broke down and you need to pay $1,000, $2,000 to fix it, it's not going to basically wipe me out and I'm living on another day-to-day basis. And it's the same thing with PT school, right? Like there are a lot of things that pop up where there's extra books, whether you want to go on a trip, where there's something else where it's like, what can you start doing after you identify all your needs so that you can start creating a buffer for yourself and start layering on safety nets for yourself? And so I hope, so that's next week. I'm going to be talking about that and going down the whole fire flow chart spreadsheet and hopefully making it as simple as possible. But hopefully you got something out of this video, because I felt like a lot of times, I know speaking to some of my classmates where they don't quite know where to start with in terms of their finances. And I like to use an analogy where it's very easy to start earning a lot more money, trying to start doing more side hustles, trying to just add more. Let me use an analogy of a bathtub, right? If you add more water on top of it, it's a good thing. You should be trying to start earning more and more money. But if your little tap at the bottom is leaking a lot of money from your expenses, whether you spend a lot of money going out to eat a lot, whether you spend a lot of money buying clothes, going on Amazon, doing lots of shopping, buying an expensive car that you don't need. Like, does this ring a bell with anybody, where it's like, you know how much you need, but then you also spend a lot more, and then you wonder why you're broke all the time and why you're having to always struggle paying your bills? It's good to actually identify and make a spreadsheet and figure out what the numbers actually are for you to survive and build off of that. And that way you can start building the life that you're looking for, rather than struggling with student loans, rather than struggling whether you know how to pay off your bills and trying to make more money, when you can control what you can control, which is, like the book said, that your savings rate, how much of your income you're taking in and how much are you actually saving on that. So that is basically my purpose for today, and talking about how you can identify your basic needs. And once you identify them, next week, I'll talk about layering on top of that your safety nets, your comfort zones, and things to build on top of that. And so if you have any questions, or let me dial back 1 second. Like, I basically started trying to do more lives and this show because I want to help student physical therapists going through school avoid either dropping out, being able to succeed. And if you have any other issues that pop up for yourself, where like maybe you're academically behind, maybe you're at the bottom of your class, maybe something is causing you to want to give up on your PT school journey, leave a comment below like what that would be, because I feel like it's important to talk about this. It's important to have these conversations. And if you don't want to leave a comment below, that's fine too. Just, DM me. You can see me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Send me a message, because the more you have these conversations, the more we're able to basically talk about what we're going through, how we can handle it, and go from there. So hopefully you got something out of this. Leave a comment below about what you got and any issues that we got. And I'll talk to you next time, next week, talking about building the safety zone. All right, take it easy. Bye-bye.